I am sorry that it has been that long since I have posted on YouTube. We have all the intentions of getting back to season 2, where I'm answering your questions using Fusion 360. But in this video, I want to show you 2 things that I think is pretty cool. First, we're going to model up this box in Fusion 360, and we're going to use parameters, we're going to use layout sketches, we're going to use joins, all kinds of cool stuff. And then second, as many of you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Jimmy Diresta, and I'm gonna show you a trick that I learned in one of his videos that I absolutely have to share with you when it comes to using wood glue. So, start out in Fusion 360, model that box up, and then we'll switch over and quickly run through building it. I'm gonna show you this cool trick. I left the link for Jimmy's channel down in the description area. You gotta check this guy out. He is absolutely awesome. So, with that, let's get to it. So we've done this in a couple of other videos where we are actually starting out by throwing numbers into the parameter dialog box before we draw anything up on the screen. So what I prefer to do is to go to the parameter tab and then click on the 3 small dots to add that to the top of my toolbar inside of Fusion. Just makes it easier when you're jumping in and out, so you don't have to, hunt through the drop-down menu. And I'm going to put, a length, width, and I'm going to make sure that I spell width correctly in this video, and a height into this. And then I'm going to start a standard rectangle, so just a center rectangle, and then I'm going to use the parameters to define, the dimensions of that rectangle. So just start typing in whatever you call those parameters, and they will appear right there. Now, one of the rules is that when you're working with parameters, and you will see that through this video, test often. It's one of the best things you can do. So just whenever you're using parameters in some kind of an instance, go in and make an adjustment in your parameters just to make sure that, things are working the way they should. For the height, I'm actually going to use an offset from a construction plane. So just again here, you can use the parameter number or the parameter value to offset up for the height. So we have a layout sketch and we have a construction plane. Now it's actually time to start adding components in here. So right click up on the top of your tree and insert component, and that immediately is going to turn it into an assembly. Now there is that little fish eye, that little dot that would activate whatever is active, and it's important that you have the right one highlighted. So I'm going to go here to this component. I'm going to slow left click on it, and I'm going to name it leg. This is going to be one of the legs inside of this box. So I'm going to make this leg 40 by 40, but this is many times when you're modeling where you suddenly realize that, hey, that could maybe be good as a parameter. So you can always just go in and hit the parameter box and then just create that parameter, go back into your original sketch, and then double click on the dimension, and then just type in, leg dimension, and then that will pop in there. And actually because this was 40 by 40, I can actually just double click on the other one and click on the first dimension, and that is an easy way to copy dimensions inside of Fusion. So then I'm going to extrude the legs up with the standard extrude command, and I know that I have a height in there, so I can just type that in. But of course, there's going to be a board on top of this, so I can measure the board, in this case 12 millimeters, and I can just type in height minus that 12 millimeters, and that will take that into account. But that's again when you start thinking that, well, what if I later on want to change the thickness of the board? Maybe that should be a parameter. So of course, again, you can go and you can change that 12 to a parameter, and now you're just going to say the height minus the board, and then board thickness, and then you're all set. All right, so here's something important. This leg was created as a component, what means that you of course can drag it and you can move it, right? This is where we're kind of like talking about joints, because this is an assembly. Now, in other videos, I've talked about that there's 2 ways, preferably, to tie a component down. There's actually 3, and I'm going to use the third one here. So the first one, my least favorite, is to go in and create a joint between the origin of our movable component and the origin of our assembly. If you create that, it will fix it, but one of the reasons I don't like that is that it's not visible for anybody. So if you're coming back like a few weeks later to make a change, it can be hard to find out which component was it that I joined to the origin. So another way that I normally prefer is to right click on, in this case, the leg component and make it grounded, and that will give you that little thumbtack icon there. But in this case, the third option is we actually want that component to be tied into that layout sketch, because whenever I'm changing the layout sketch of the box, I want the leg to follow that. So you can actually create a joint between the end point of our leg to the corner point of our sketch. This is pretty cool. So I'm going to do that, and of course again test it, and you will see that if we're moving the layout sketch with the parameters, then the leg moves along with it. Now from that point I need 3 other legs, right? I need a total of 4. So I'm going to right click on our first leg and select copy, and then I'm going to go up and select on the top component, our assembly component. I'm going to right click there and say paste. And when I do that, then you get the copy command right there. I'm just dragging these legs out just to kind of like move them around a little bit. So I'm going to do that 3 times. And now we have all 4 legs. And then I'm going to go back in and use the joint command again. So go to each leg, and you got to be a little careful here. Make sure that you are selecting actually the corner point on that layout sketch, and not just the sketch itself. So lay that out. Be careful that you get it highlighted. And then, of course, again, parameters, test it. Test it. So go in and change some numbers and just see that these legs are moving around. So with the legs, I'm actually ready to apply the top component. So what I'm going to do is I am going to right click, create a new component, make sure that one is active. I can go up on the top plane that we created before. I can open up a sketch. I can actually project the edges from our bottom layout sketch and extrude that the board thickness that we have already applied. Now these layout sketches are your friends. So to create the sideboards, I'm going to use those layout sketches again. So I'm going to open up a sketch. Now notice that this one I'm going to open up on the center plane, not on the side of the box, but I'm going to do it on the center of the plane. And just because creating your layout sketches right on that origin plane just makes it a little bit easier. And in this case here, I'm just going to draw a couple of rectangles, and I am going to again use the parameter heights that we already have in there, and I'm going to use constraints, of course, to align everything. And then I'm also going to change the dimension. So I want to control the dimension between the 2 boards, and then I'm going to add another dimension at the bottom because I actually want that sideboard to be about 10 millimeters above where our legs is touching the ground. This is kind of like just clearance here. Now again, don't forget, you got to create those new components, make sure whatever is active. It can be hard to go backwards if you mess this up. So, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. Now I'm going to create a new component for these side ones. And then when I click to extrude them, you can actually select in the dialog box where these are going to start from. Now, if you've used Fusion before or any other CAD software, we're normally pretty used to just creating a 2D sketch on a plane and extrude from that sketch. But it's important to know that in the standard extrude command, you can change the start position. So I'm going to click on the start position, and then I'm going to select that side board, and now the extrusion actually going from there, what is kind of cool. Now I'm using the same board for the entire thing, so it's just going to be the same board thickness on both of them. Now I do this and I realize that, you know, again, I got components, so they're floating around, and I actually forgot to use joints for the top lid when we created the top board. So here's a neat little trick. Just roll back in the timeline, 1, 2, 3, 4, down to wherever you created that top. And then I love to use as-built joint for something like this. As-built joint will kind of like just take two components, one that is already grounded, in this case our legs, or they're jointed to the layout sketch, and it will create a rigid joint to that. This is an extremely good way to apply joints when you kind of like are building almost like Legos on top of each other like we're doing here. So do that for the top lid, then just grab that timeline down the bottom, moving that to the end, and then do the same thing for the two side panels. Now, you know me, I like to be lazy when it comes to CAD and CAM. So I'm going to use the mirror command to get those side panels over on the other side of the box. Super easy, but don't forget, they are mirrored components, which means you also need to use the as-built joint for that one. Now for the front, I am going to kind of rinse and repeat what you just saw for the side. So make sure my assembly component is active, open up a layout sketch there on the front of it, and draw that up. Same thing, pretty much the same way I did it on the side. And then go ahead and extrude those out. And again, test it. See things moving around. If you miss that, it can be hard to go back and fix things. All right, I get to this point and I just can't take gray on gray anymore. So I like to go in and do the appearances, right? So right click out in the modeling area and hit appearances, the little beach ball there. And I'm gonna just find pine. You can actually search in the search menu there and go in and find that and drag that on the legs. And then this is a particle board for the sides. And this is just some stuff that I had laying around that I'm gonna reuse. Again, the whole idea about creating this little box was I wanted to use things that I had laying around in the shop. Here's a neat little trick. You can actually go up and right click on a appearance, and then you have all kinds of options in here, including like scaling. So you can actually scale it to look more like how it does in the real world, depending on how big your particle board are compared to your components. That's pretty neat. So this is kind of the base for this box, and the idea about this is that this base is strong enough to hold this 3D printer I'm going to put on it. The next part of it is probably the coolest part, but it's really just decorative, right? So I wanted to kind of give this a, I would call it like from when I was a kid, like an old apple box or something like that. When you bought apples in the olden days back in Denmark, many times you got like this tiny little wooden box. That's kind of like the look I was looking for. So I have this old fence laying around that I've actually used in the other video where I created that sign that I have hanging on the wall. Another idea still from Jimmy Diresta. So I'm gonna put that on the side, and I really didn't want it to rip this along the length. I just wanted to cut the end. So I was pretty set on 90 millimeters for the width, and then of course the length I'm okay doing that. So I'm just gonna draw that here and give it the thickness, and then I'm gonna use a standard joint to make a joint from the edge to the edge of our particle board. But of course this is decorative, so I actually want that to be down to the same level as the leg. So be aware of that. You can adjust the location of your joints over here in the dialog box. That is super, super helpful. Now, when I spin it around, I realize that I actually want these front panels here to extend past, the width plus the boards. And this is one of the areas where it's super handy to use parameters. So what we actually can do is, if we go back into the sketch here, is to edit and say width plus, and then if you use a bracket, you can do like math within a parameter. So we do the width minus or plus the bracket, and then we can do the board thickness times 2, close the bracket, and then it's long enough. Again, so if we're changing the width command, this one will follow along with the board thickness. This is about as mathematically as we're gonna get in this video. Now, the fun part about this box is when it comes to using the pattern command to place up these boards. And I want to show you two different ways to do that. I first want to show you the way that I ended up doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to select the pattern function. I'm going to go in and select the components. I'm going to select the vertical line that I want to pattern along, right? Now I know that I only have material enough to do 4 panels per side. So the 3 of the sides, I'm going to leave the back open because nobody's going to see that. But so the adjustments, if the 90 millimeter thickness, that's going to be constant for 4 boards. So I need to adjust everything else, or the height's going to be adjusted to fit for these 4 boards. Now the magic here is to use the extent function and then just do the height minus 1 board thickness. And if I do that, then you always will make sure that the bottom board stays flush with the ground and the top board is staying flush with the top. And then the 2 other boards will just adjust within that. So now I can start adjusting the height parameter and find out actually where that height will be. And if you're going too far, you can literally see inside of there that it will overlap. So this was what I did to find out what my overall height of this box should be. Again, because I'm using these 4 panel sections as kind of dictating the height. All right, so let me just give you one more option, because this is just an attempt to try to add more value to your Fusion 360 experience. And that is that if you're okay with that value that I had fixed at 90 to change along, as you're changing the height, you also want that board width to change with it. So we're gonna go back in and edit the sketch. So there you have the 90 millimeters. Go in and create a parameter. I'm gonna call that distance. And then in the expression, I'm gonna change it to be the height divided by 4. So I'm using 4 panels. So now that will just change that height. So if I go back out of the parameters and go in and change the 90 to be distance, go back in and edit our pattern, and then you will see in this video I'm playing a little bit with the minus in front of it depending on the direction. Change that to the minus distance, and then go and change from extent to spacing. Then you will see that now if we go in and we edit the height, then those boards will always change divided with that. So just a couple of different ways to kind of handle this and making sure that the bottom and the top panel stays the same, but everything kind of like changes within. I hope this is useful. All right, somebody might say that was a lot of Fusion 360 in one video. So just repeat the pattern up on the side and you end up with a good looking box like this. Now, let's get to the point where we actually are making the box and I can show you that cool Jimmy Diresta trick. So this is gonna be quick. So just wanted to use materials I had laying around in the shop. I didn't want to go out and buy things to make this box, and there you just kind of like saw that fence piece that I've been using in other videos. My favorite DeWalt saw that I got from my father-in-law, just cutting the legs aside here. And then this is actually the wood in the crate that the Stepcraft came from. So thank you Stepcraft for providing some of that for this video. Then back to my DeWalt saw here. I actually didn't know that you could rip on this saw when I first got it, but you can. And a lot of people don't like this saw, says it's super dangerous. I haven't had any issues. I've also been very, very careful whenever I'm using it. I always use safety glasses and things like that. Now, this project for me, and I'm not a great woodworker, was really trying to keep things square and to size. You see, I'm double measuring and I'm measuring again. You know, when I'm watching Jimmy Diresta, that's also, he always does that. So a couple of sides here, a couple of end pieces, and then the side here. And I have seen in a lot of YouTube videos that people are using kind of like these straps to kind of make sure that everything is square before they nail everything up. So of course I'll do that too. Get my square in there, make sure everything is good. And somehow I ended up messing it up anyways. When I put the top on, I realized that the top should actually have been a little bit bigger. I could have seen that in my CAD file too. So I had a little piece of trim that I put on there. Here's when my wife gets scared, when I start just using power tools and cutting things falling off, landing on the floor, but everything is good. And this is just trying to decorate the sides here of this. I still had to rip one of the pieces. I messed it up. Here is another thing that I hope Jimmy Diresta would be proud of, having a stop on your saw as you're cutting things. And here you go, Jimmy Diresta. I would never ever have thought about this. So using wood glue, you always see in videos that everybody is clamping things down. But using a hot glue gun, then you can actually just press it down and it sits there while the wood glue does its magic. So Jimmy Diresta, I absolutely love your videos. You're awesome, man. And this is one of those tips that I would never ever in my life have thought about using a glue gun along with wood glue to tie something down. Now, I'm sure there's some woodworkers out there saying, well, yeah, that's all great, but there's something, maybe. But for putting these sides on that is pure decorative, this was perfect. I didn't have to nail anything in. I thought was kind of cool. So Jimmy, thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. So yeah, I mean, just perfect. Just press it down a couple times and they're sitting there and they're still sitting there and they haven't fallen off and I think it looks super good. Now I did mess some things up, so here I'm with a saw, just doing a little surgery. But that's how it goes. Here's the front pieces. This was actually what I patterned inside of Fusion 360 with those parameters. Just showing you putting those on. Remember the video where we did the stencils for the suitcase using the Stepcraft to cut out the cardboards? I'm still using those stencils, just to adding a little bit of swag to this box here. Sprayed some Autodesk logos on it just for a little bit of branding, right? All right, so that was this project. Love the Fusion 360 aspect of using the parameters, especially if you were making different boxes on a regular basis. Now you just have those parameters, you can edit it, and then you have the different configurations. So that's super helpful. And my thanks to Jimmy Diresta for always putting out this awesome content. I love the learning. I want to hear down in the comments area how many people would have thought about using wood glue and a hot glue together and get such a fabulous result. So I really appreciate that. As always, thank you so much for watching these videos. It's just an attempt to add a little bit more value to your Fusion 360 experience. Thumbs up if you like it. If you don't, please be honest, thumbs down. That's okay. And until the next time, I hope you have an awesome, awesome day. Take care, folks.